I first studied how to correct my mind. While my heart was broken, it could never be healed until I healed my mind. And in that window and in that time, I recognized that all the work I had done in the world prior, while I thought I was a creative that engaged my work with wellness, I realized in that time that wellness is the work. It is the work. Hello, and welcome to Robert Young's Bright, Famed, Shining, the podcast, where creativity meets wellness. I'm so happy to have you here. In today's episode, it's a special one. It's dedicated to World Mental Health Day. This particular episode is something that's dear to my heart. When it comes to the one-on-one episodes like this, BFS, Artist Proofs, I often speak about a project that I've worked on in the creative industries, the challenges to secure that project, and the things I did to maintain my mental health throughout the process. Today, I'm very happy to announce that the project that I'd like to speak about in honor of this global day in support of mental health is the podcast itself. Robert Young's Bright, Famed, Shining, the podcast, where creativity meets wellness. I repeat that again and again and again because that is the point. The point is creatives, I believe, are the healers of the world. But the question now remains, who will heal the healers? You see, as creatives, many people believe that we are living our perfect sunflower, ocean breeze life, that there is no distress in our existence. But yet, when we all look into our understanding of who some of the greatest creatives of the world are, we see instances of death via suicide, the misuse of drugs, etc. We see that suffering has been a great part of the artist's experience, of the creative's experience. And yet I see little room in space and time where we honor, uplift, and support creatives. And so today, I would like to speak specifically as to why I have been driven to do this work. Many people have asked me over the years when seeing me in public, how have I maintained or managed such a sense of peace? And that is because I have worked quite significantly to present myself in a manner that is in alignment with seeing you well. But in my life, I have suffered great tragedies. No different than any of you out there. But it is important today, on this day, that we speak about what it is to reveal our suffering, to put our traumas in the forefront, that we may be empowered by our ability to express them and engaged by the thoughts and ideas that influence us from that experience of expressing ourselves. You see, in my conversation with my therapist today, I asked, is it okay to talk about the passing of my mother on my podcast? I've done it in public speaking events. But is it okay, as much as I think it'll be in service of others, will it harm me? Or will it be in service of me? And he expressed clearly that my instincts are correct, that sharing the intimacy of my experience not only will and can be of benefit to others, but it will most certainly help to heal me. And this has been the great gift of this podcast, the great gift of sharing ideas as it pertains to our well-being. I say our, I mean the planet. And in this particular case, very specifically, I mean creatives on the planet. that are doing their purposeful work in the world. Today, I spoke to a friend of mine, an incredible dancer, scholar extraordinaire, who has a copy of my book, Daily Inspiration, Your Guide to Hope in Times of Hopelessness. And he was making a bit of a joke, and he said, a friend of mine wrote these words. I should read them to you. Maybe you'll be inspired. Page 101. And he said, and I quote, "You must vigorously believe in the way until your journey flows as effortlessly as the river. There are forces in life that intend to build up your doubt and envelop you in grief. They do not play fair, nor gently. They roughhouse you, attempting to beat you into submission. But often you submit to them after making minimal efforts to eradicate them from your life. No half-hearted prayer or simple plea for help will remove the monkey from your back. You must stand up and move fluidly past your obstacles each and every day, for it is your constant forward movement that will turn jagged rocks into smooth pebbles. Just as the persistent flow of water carves valleys out of mountains, you too must flow." So in this special episode, let me begin with an expression of some of my own life traumas. I lost my father in 2007. He passed after months of being in the hospital. In a year where my mother had lost her sister in Atlanta, and upon finding out her brother had broke his hip and wanted to dearly see his sister, I flew my mother to Jamaica while I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I met her at the airport. We hadn't been together in Jamaica since I was a very small boy. My mother loved Toronto. No matter where in the world she came to visit me, when I lived in Barbados, Miami, I think her visit to California is the only place where she considered she'd live outside of Toronto. So here we were, in the land of her birth in Jamaica, a place I hold dear in my heart, in my soul, in my spirit. It carries me. It reminds me of my lineage as an African. Born of the African diaspora, I am proud of my roots in Jamaica. Born in Canada. And now an American citizen as well. My mother is quarter Chinese, or half, and I am a quarter Chinese. So I am a man of the world, I believe. While in Jamaica, my mother's brother saw her. And at first day, he didn't recognize her. On the second day, he said, "Oh my God, my sister has come to see me." It gave him so much joy. They looked at his vitals and they thought, what a recovery. He's doing so well. We might be strong enough now that we can perform this hip surgery. He died the next day. Something about the closure, about seeing his sister, gave him joy and allowed him to let go of trying to hold on to existing in this place. I've always been enamored, engaged, curious about that philosophy, about how people see their loved ones on their deathbed and find the strength to greet them and then say goodbye. I took my mother to her birthplace. I found it with the driver up in the hills in Mandeville, a place that could only be found by asking Rastaman on the side of the road, "A which way? A which way?" The man said, "Yeah man, go up so and turn up so, and when you make a right up so and make a left up so, you find it." Somehow we did. I remember that. And I remembered again when I returned during my sabbatical without my mother. She had passed on. So how did that event impact my life? Well, when my father died, I say I became a man. But when my mother died, I became a child. My understanding of my presence on the planet was a loss. I was Vinette's son. My identity was wrapped up in that idea. Who was I without her? Now, how did that take place? Well, I had put on, to date, I think, the most glorious and connected activation of my career. It was for the Pan American Games in Toronto. And I was paid a healthy sum and given the freedom to create magic. 41 portraits of women of the Games, territories, and nations, painted in the color of the flag of the place they call home. It was beautiful. It opened on my mother's birthday. I sang her happy birthday from the podium. I had never known a joy like that. To have done good in the world, to have created a space for identity, and yet a oneness between us, young world faces. Its mission is, may you see yourself in the eyes of others. And there I was that night, 41 different nationalities in one sitting. My mother in the room dressed in pink, myself in pink, all of the subjects wearing a piece of pink to represent unconditional love. It was the single greatest gratifying moment of my life as a creative, and most importantly, as a healer, as an advocate for wellness. About 13 days after the activation opening on my mother's birthday, I got a call. It turns out that the GFI that we had put under the carpet to power the show, a power surge had gone right through the GFI. It never triggered. It never shut off the power. Instead, the wire on the other side caught flames, and there was a fire under the fire retardant rug. Thank goodness I paid for that extra fire retardant pad. Security turned off the show and called me and let me know there was an issue. So I called the team. We all got together to set a plan in motion to go the following day. That following day would have been July 21st, 2 weeks after my mother's birthday and the opening of the Young World Faces of Pan Am activation in the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. The next morning I got up and I got a haircut, got some therapy work done on my shoulder, and I walked back into the house. And at that time, I had just been back in Toronto after being away for 15 years. But one thing I knew for sure, my mother was always up early. She wasn't for some reason. I didn't see her in the kitchen when I first came in the door, and she wasn't in the sitting room watching her shows. But her room door was closed. I knocked on it. "Hey, Mom, you sleeping in?" No answer. I knocked again. No answer. I opened the door to find my mother had passed in her sleep unexpectedly. Crushed me. I was in a state of disbelief. I screamed out. Somehow managed to get 911 on the phone. They asked me to put her on the floor to give her compressions. This thing called the human mind, who has the power to do that in a moment like that? Yet I did. I understand the meaning of dead weight. I lift my mother up and tried my best to gently place her on the floor. I began the compressions with 911 on speakerphone on the cordless. I couldn't look down. In my heart, I knew she was gone. Eventually, the ambulance came. I was still over her, in shock. I just spoke to her last night. I went out into the living room and dealt with the most tremendously horrible task of calling family one by one to let them know they needed to come to the house, that mom was gone. I still remember the screaming, the denial through the phone. What are you talking about? What do you mean gone? I had to relive the shock and the horror again and again, phone call after phone call. Finally, I turned to the emergency folks and said, could one of you help me? I need to put my mother back in the bed. And I remember the gentleman looked at me and said, oh, I'm sorry, sir, we have to wait for the coroner. And I said, well, I understand that you have to do what you have to do, but allow me to clarify something to you. In a few moments, there are women in my life, and my family will be running down that hallway screaming, calling out for their mother. And what they're not going to do is come into the house, burst into the room, and look and see your feet on the floor at the foot of the bed. So, I will tell you that if you like, you can help me put her back in the bed. But what I can tell you for sure is that you won't stop me from putting her back in the bed. So it is your choice. Gentleman looked at his colleague and said, I understand, I will help you. Then we moved to put my mother in the bed. I massaged her face. Rigor mortis had almost set in, and I'd found her face down so she didn't look much like herself. I tried to bring heat back into her face so she can look like the queen I knew her to be. I gently remember pressing her hair down back into the pillow. I wanted her to be beautiful because that's who she is in my heart. I don't know how I imagined I could make her lifeless body beautiful to anyone that could come in the room, but I didn't know what else to do. At the funeral, sometimes they do something where they offer you to shovel some dirt on the casket, usually just one or two. After one became two, and two became three, and three became me taking off my jacket. I was insistent that I would cover that casket with enough dirt that I couldn't see it. At the repast, I drank a bottle of rum. For the next 6 months, I ate trash. My mother was my favorite chef. I could not bring myself to eat meals cooked by a human being. Only fast food, junk, pizza, fried chicken, trash. I ate for 6 months. I suffered, I wallowed, I made a mess of myself. And that entire time, though I was Canadian and had health care, I couldn't seem to get access to help me mentally resolve what was going on, the destruction of loneliness and isolation and fear and confusion in terms of who I was without her. There was no help to be found. And about 6 months in, I went to see the doctor. I had assumed by this point in time that I was most certainly killing myself. I'd been going to the gym like a madman, sprinting in negative 25-degree weather, Celsius. Out before the sunrise, I was determined to put my suffering to the test physically. But again, I ate like garbage. So when I went to see the doctor, I assumed, much like the Super Size Me film, that I'd exploded in terms of my cholesterol and I'd done damage to my kidneys. But as fate would have it, the doctor came back with an A++ report on my health. Only God could have done that, because I certainly was in a place of self-destruction. And in that moment, I realized that I may not be alone in this thing. And I made a choice. You have two options, Robert, I said, staring into the mirror in my bedroom. Kill yourself now, or choose life. I remember the deep dive I did into imagining all of the sacrifices that my mother and my father made to bring me into this world. To you listening, who have ever been on the brink or maybe are on the brink now, I tell you, look and see that someone in this world made significant sacrifices to give you a chance to live. It is the only thing that saved me, at least in Epiphany, that drew to action. I went on a mission. I searched website after website after website and cross-referenced information and tried to understand deeply what is and how is grief. Navigate it. And after cross-referencing different pieces of information, I found a combination of things to save myself. You cannot pray for peace with a mind that's broken. You're not going to get through. You can't fix a broken mind with a broken mind. You're not going to get through. You must first reverse, change, engage the chemical imbalances that are driving the grief. Your mind is looking to close a gap to that which is no longer accessible to you. It's its duty to search out that which you have lost. And in its duty is where your grief lies, for you know that what you are searching for can never again be found on this plane of existence. Your loved one is gone. I called it transcendence for years. It took me 8 years to say my mother is dead. In that process, I began a journal called Transforming Grief Back into Love. I wrote about the complexities of grief. I wrote about how they do not honor the love, but instead they are a direct reflection of how great the love was, or is in this case, for my love for my mother is undeniably forever. I first studied how to correct my mind. While my heart was broken, it could never be healed until I healed my mind. And in that window, and in that time, I recognized that all the work I had done in the world prior, while I thought I was a creative that engaged my work with wellness, I realized in that time that wellness is the work. It is the work. All of us suffer a trauma. Creatives, in particular, suffer trauma in a very significant way, in that our identity is tied to the work that we do. And if we are creatives that engage wellness, well, therein lies the trouble. For art entertains while artists suffer. Tagline of my film, For Art's Sake. Art entertains while artists suffer. This podcast is to carve out a space to let you know you are absolutely not alone. Just went through the WGA strike, ran out of all of your savings, stressed to wonder as a grown person how it is you're struggling to pay your rent. That is a trauma that you are suffering. And while the world might turn back on and you may get back to work, you must replenish. You must heal the suffering that you endured to survive, the pain you swallowed to trudge forward, to borrow money, to beg for assistance, to put your ego aside, as they say in Jamaica, pride will kill you faster than a speeding bullet. Or as they also say, pride comes before the fall. You have to put your pride aside. And that's not just because a strike was significant. This is the life of creatives every day, where they cannot turn off the part of their brain that tells them they must do this work. They have to paint. They have to shoot photographs. They have to write poetry. They have to write screenplays. They have to direct film projects. They have to write books. An artist's life is not a simple one. But what it is a gift to us in the world. They design images that make us smile, movies that make us cry, phones that catch our eye, songs that lift up our heart, that drive memories. Everything has been designed that we use on a daily basis, from the clothes we wear to our watch, by a creative. Shall we not celebrate them? uplift them, give them a space to be their best self. Let them know they are never, ever, ever alone. Yes. If it is the last thing I do, yes. But I am here today to plead with you, for this journey cannot be taken alone. This is a community. The human family needs our help. They need creatives to check us on our morality, remind us of our humanity, show us how to love after loss. I am a creative and I am here for that. Wellness over everything. This is the point where I would like to tell you some things that I'd like you to consider doing. Please remove from your mind the idea that mental health in and of itself is a reflection of something negative. Physical health is not something that we consider in and of itself something to be negative. We know that physical health can be good and your physical health can be bad. And that the goal is to attain good, if not great, physical health. The same is true of the mind. The nuances of the body are the same. Train the mind, it gets better. Train the body, it gets better. Do not utilize the body, it breaks down. Do not properly utilize the mind, it breaks down. Seek mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health. And here's a few steps as to how. Go to the gym. The benefits of it, don't take my word for it. Go online. Study the data, the scientific research on the impact of working out and taking care of yourself. Again, don't take my word for it, but trust me, you will find the answers in the research. There's no denying the impact of early rising and physical activity. Second, come to terms with your understanding of what you think life and death is. Now, that may take you a long time, but the exercise is significantly important because at the time, in the moment of losing someone dear to you or bringing life into the world for the first time, you have no idea what your philosophies mean to you until you are sitting in that moment, looking at that brand new baby, or planning that funeral. Thirdly, meditate. I don't mean be airy, fairy, and close your eyes and disappear half asleep into somewhere. I mean make an effort to see your thoughts and experience them without judgment. Just to see your thoughts and experience them without judgment. Learn how to experience the highs and the lows of your life in your mind in isolation and manage them so that when future issues of trauma or that can cause trauma, disappointment, failure, the most basic of things, someone cutting you off in traffic, so that when those things come, you have done such work in assessing and analyzing who and what you are and how you respond to your life experiences with equanimity, calm under distress, that you can pause, put forth positive acceptance under stress, external, and manage your mind. This is the way to love again, to happiness again, to the removal of ignorance, to a childhood levity that we all dream of now and again. I love you when I say this. I love you, humanity, but I hate you at times. Help me love you all the time. Help me love me all the time. Let's together do the work to be better for ourselves and for each other. There is more than enough money to feed the world and to ensure that no one is homeless. Yet, people go without food. Children go to sleep hungry. And adults sleep on the sidewalk all over the world. We are not well. So no, I'm not asking everyone in the world to wake up and suddenly be great. But you, the creatives, you know adversity. You know the ups and downs. And you get back up every time. One more painting, one more photo shoot, one more writing of an incredible blog post that may change the world. One more. We are here for that. To support you on your journey to one more. All it takes is someone caring, without judgment, listening, owning compassion for you and what you do. And it will give you the strength to carry on. I love you, all of you. Those who are listening for the first time, those who have been supporting the podcast, those who have made efforts to financially engage and support the podcast, to mentally support the podcast, to emotionally support the podcast, to just tell me that they're happy that it's happening. That has been my great joy in my life. And I promise you that I will continue. Show me, share with me, tell me that this is being in service of you. I won't stop doing it, no matter what. But your encouragement helps me to drive through all obstacles to ensure that I can be here of service. Being in service saved my life. And it is my deep and honest pleasure to do that for you, to give you the strength that you could be in service of others. Without further ado, I would like to flip through Daily Inspiration one more time, see where we land on the page, and close this incredible session on this note. Inspiration nurtures growth. You are being heard. So continue to speak out. For your voice is both the asking and answering to your prayers. For in it lies the very inspiration that has built every city and torn down every nation. Be careful then what you ask for. Use your power to heal yourself and others. When you ask earnestly for something, it shall be given. So ask for that which does not hinder, but rather nurtures your growth. Your words lay the path to your actions. Speak accordingly. It has been my great pleasure to record this episode in support of World Mental Health Day. I hope it and the many others within this podcast support you. Thank you for listening to Robert Young's Bright, Famed, Shining, the podcast, where creativity meets wellness. I love you. Ashe.